Welcome. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and as we travel around our county, we're trying to highlight the different government agencies, 501c3s that mean a difference, mean something to us in our community other than just going to work. And we want you to meet those people and get to be involved in them. And today I have the opportunity of having, I guess, the distinction. The month of September is National Preparedness Week, month.
It is National Preparedness Month, every September.
And Mac Purdy, many of you have seen Mac. He's been around several years now, does an outstanding job. I'll let you introduce Steve in a few moments. But talk to us a little bit about the EMA and the role that Steve is playing and how we're branching out. We've got so much to talk about. I don't know that we'll get it all in today.
We may not get it all in, but I think we get to take September and focus our whole community on preparedness, on our individual and family preparedness, on, do we have a kit? Have we made a plan? Do we know how we as individuals or we as families would deal with, and are we prepared if an emergency or disaster should impact us? And really that's what we get to do in our jobs every day, every month. And we try and make our community a little more prepared, whether that's opening new fire stations, recruiting volunteers, working on the 911 center, and some exciting things that are going on in partnerships across our county. And so that's really, we get to highlight that and try and focus us all on being just a little better prepared.
So Steve's got a new role, a new employer, actually.
That's right. So Steve Martini came on board. How long has it been?
10 weeks.
10 weeks. And new role as the 911 director here in Williamson County, and has a great background both here in Williamson County and some other places in Tennessee and around as well. And I guess you could tell us a little about where you came from and what got you to your current role.
For the past 3 years, I've been in Brentwood as their Emergency Communications Center supervisor, and that was a great role, a great opportunity to work closely with you and with Bill Jorgensen and with the county as an emergency communications partner. This opportunity here is something that I'm passionate about with consolidation, this consolidated communications effort we're embarking on with the city of Franklin and the county. It's something I've done in the past in Hamilton County and Chattanooga area in the late 2000s. We did a consolidation down there of about 9 different 911 centers into a
So let me interrupt you here.
Sure.
I'm sitting here thinking, I bet the average person doesn't realize the way the 911 system works. And let's take a typical phone call that comes in. You dial 911. We'll just say we're here at West Main, the studios, and we dial 911. What happens?
The challenge is there's 3 different ways, 3 different things that happen. If we pick up a landline phone, one of these, your typical phone that you're used to, plugs into the wall with a cord that most folks may not have. It's the device you have to explain to your kids on what it is and what it does. My boys think that the piece in the wall is where you plug your Wi-Fi modem in.
I get
So if you call from that device, your call is routed to the nearest or the appropriate 911 center that is in charge of dispatching the resources for where you live. Most people, that makes up about 15% of our total 911 call load anymore, is those calls from the landline devices. Most of our calls come from cell phones. When you make a 911 call from a cell phone, it's completely different. If you have an older device, a 3G or older device, what the 911 center receives is a call from the cell tower that you're transmitting off of, which may not be the cell tower that's closest to you. If that one's busy with calls, it may be the one next over and next over. That cell tower routes the call to the nearest 911 center to that cell tower, which is oftentimes, when I was in Brentwood, there were many times we'd catch calls over into Davidson County or vice versa. For Williamson County, if you're in Fairview, it's very likely you can make a call that goes over into Dixon County. If you're down on the south side near Spring Hill, it could go into Spring Hill or into Murray County. There's all sorts of ways your call can travel. So there's a lot of transferring between 911 centers now when those calls are made. If you're calling from a 3G or later device, which most people have, I would think, across Williamson County, your iPhone 4, 5, 6s all and along. And then we get a GPS estimate accurate within about 300 yards of where you are. and your phone number. 300 yards is great if you're standing in a field. We have a pretty good idea where you are. It's not so great if you're standing in the heart of Franklin downtown, because it could be anywhere. If we draw a 3 football field circle around the middle of Franklin, I don't know what building you're in. I'm not exactly sure, so it gets more challenging. And that's about 85% of the phone calls that we take is folks from the interstate and folks that are calling from their cellular devices. So there's a variety of challenges.
So I have people, Steve or Mackie, the one of you want to answer it. On our bills that we get at home, I still have a landline along with the cell phones. And I did that primarily because a couple of years ago, my mom was living with me in the latter period of her life. And I wanted her to be able, if I was at work, to be able to just pick up that phone, either the cordless, which took some convincing that the cordless did work for Mom, because she was used to the one you drug all the way around the house.
Right.
To me, it was a safety feature that if she needed some attention quickly, you could pinpoint that call directly.
Absolutely.
Now, there is convenience to having a cell phone strapped to our belt and on our hips and in our purses. But there are some dangers with doing that people need to understand, that when it comes to in-home emergencies, you're right. In the middle of a field, we can find you. Mm-hmm. But downtown Franklin, downtown Brentwood, Nashville, those are often harder to do. In time, we'll have that. The technology is out there to pinpoint where you are calling from. But when people are evaluating, and evaluated on different things, usually it's about cost. Mm-hmm. I'm not making a plug for a phone company. I'm making a plug for safety, that if you've got some health issues and you're concerned about someone responding in a timely manner, there is no better source than the landline.
Sure. Because what we need to know more than anything else is, where is your emergency?
That's exactly right.
If I know exactly what's going on where you are, but I don't know where you are, I can't help you. But if I know where you are and I don't know what's going on, I can send the entire cavalry and we'll figure it out when we get there.
And I think it's important too that today, the world we live in, the technology world, that many of our phones go through our computers.
Absolutely.
Which is a whole different ballgame.
Right. For those folks that have these voice over internet phones like you're talking about, and it happens quite frequently actually around the country, is it's routed based on where the address is for where you pay your bill. So if you have the ability to unplug this phone and take it on a business trip or whatnot, and you plug it back into the wall in a hotel in Minneapolis, if you call 911, it's going to route through your home center where you pay your bill.
That's correct.
You call in a panic that somebody's trying to break into your hotel room or whatnot, or you're having a medical emergency, you're going to talk to a dispatcher thousands of miles away who, and as much as the 911 number is a national number, the 911 system is local, even to the point of individual municipalities in a lot of places. So I don't have Minneapolis 911 on a speed dial here. The closest I can get is probably Southern Kentucky on a quick transfer.
And I think it's important as we are having these discussions, because that is preparedness.
It's part of your plan, knowing how you'd get help or who to call, and thinking about those individual family things. Like, are you at a place where you're able to leave older kids at home for a little while, and do they have a cell phone? Is there a landline, phone that they can call if they need, whether it's they need a snack or if they have an emergency, or somebody with those health issues, or someone who lives alone, those different things. I think that is part of our plan of how would we talk about building a preparedness kit and having a plan. I realized something in our family planning not too long ago is, we do all of our everything online now. We pay our bills, we manage our accounts and those things, and those passwords and the way to get into those, and how I would put that back together if we had to leave our home because it was damaged in a disaster. I had a gap in my plan, and so we work on that, and I'm not where I want to be, but and so we work on those different processes, just like we'd work on having a little bit of food or water or a smoke detector or different things. That knowing how we would communicate is really even a very basic thing of understanding how the system works.
So let's go back to the 911 center on a few of those conversations, which leads us into preparedness once again. In this county, we have more than one 911 center.
Yes.
And just recently, the first part of the July, I'll use that month, that the Williamson County and the Franklin 911 Center are being rolled up into one.
Yes.
And that is a good thing for people, consumers, taxpayers, name it what you want. It's been a struggle to get all of that done, and currently, today, we're still not there. We're getting those systems set up, but in a couple of months, we'll be able to have everyone at one location. Today, they're at just 2 different locations. And as people fully utilize the 911 centers and the opportunities and the capabilities of that, there's an opportunity also in drafting this type of legislation that occurred, and it took a cooperative effort on Franklin and the county to figure out everything from pay to benefits for the employees.
Correct.
Which, by the way, I understand you could still use some employees.
Yes, I have 5 more openings. Still hoping to advertise for those in the middle of October, and with a potential start date for those positions in January to get us completely fully staffed. And it's a long and demanding job that requires holidays and weekends, and in any moment really an emergency that could occur. And about an 8-month training process. It's pretty in depth, but we would be glad to have folks who are interested in emergency communications. But maybe if you don't want to do the field side, we're warm in the winter and we're cool in the summer, and the emergency when it happens doesn't happen in my chair. So there's all kinds of benefits to doing emergency work in the center where we work.
And there's a way that you can contact you or Matt or myself. Go to the county website and follow the little icon. You can pretty well fill out, but there are job opportunities for the operation, and starting fairly. By the time you get through training, you first thing you know, it'll be Christmas time around here. But
Yes.
We're going to need some extra people to take over this workload, and it is very demanding. But I think so. I was enjoying you all talking before we went on air, talking about some of the successes that we've had from the 911 center, from our fire services provision. I'm going to let you talk on that, Mac, a little bit. But it is awful rewarding to be able to take a call and help someone in an event in their life and offer some satisfaction to it.
Sure. We had a baby delivery, or a darn near baby delivery, just a few days ago, and of a mother that had 2 premature, and the third one was consistent. So 7.5 months along, here comes number 3, and it just nothing prepares dad for exactly what to do in that scenario, or mom, I'm sure. So having a well-trained dispatcher that expects it and knows what to do, and the protocol to offer, approved by our county emergency medical director, is a great resource to walk through those processes and have your impromptu midwife on a 911 call to help through a situation like that.
Or heart attacks.
Absolutely. We had a CPR in progress. I don't know the nature of what caused it, but a CPR save in early August. A similar nature. Again, it was a younger person that you don't expect. It wasn't a hospice situation. It was just everything's going along fine, and we're mom, dad, and 3 kids, and then all of a sudden we look around. I was just in this room, and now things have changed, and it resulted in a save, which is great. It's those things that we do this this line of work for.
Mac, you have the opportunity. I mean, Steve's pretty well confined to his little 911 area.
Thank goodness.
And in the new public safety building we've got over on Beasley, he'll get that all up and going here in the next few days and few weeks. But you have the wonderful opportunity to work with a whole host of men and women across our county. We call them volunteers, and they could be. They all have different Paytonsville and Rescue Squad. They've got all the different names and been around for 50 years. In fact, the Rescue Squad's having their 50th year anniversary.
They are.
At the end of September. But you and Bill and now Steve and John, I could start naming them all, are really taking us out to a whole new level in our volunteer areas. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I think we sat down yesterday with, we have 4 staff right now that are focused on really day-to-day supporting those volunteers and helping make those programs better. Our 6 volunteer fire departments across the county that support from Nolensville to over outside of Fairview and the unincorporated areas, and then even some of our towns in Thompson Station and Nolensville, and do that work. Really, those responses, those medical calls, the first responders, the car wrecks, and the structure fires, they're responded to from volunteer fire professionals, and they do a great deal of training. There's weekly training offered for them, and there are positions in some of our stations where some of those volunteers apply and actually live in the stations and run calls, 24 hours a day, and yet we have lots of need. There's a need for, I think we have somewhere between 150, 175 volunteer firefighters in the system right now, and we think that number needs to more than double as we move forward in these next few years to really provide the coverage. You think about traffic and the way things used to be of everyone's kind of going about their day, and the bell in town square goes off, or their pager or their radio, and they come to the station. Well, that slows down response time. It slows down getting that help where it needs to go, and so they do great work. We've had a couple of house fires in the last few months where, as tragic as they are, the volunteers did an excellent job of saving a historic home off of Del Rio and stopping that fire. And it's, no matter how much fire there is, it's devastating to that home and it's a crisis. But they didn't lose the whole home, and that was a success.
And I'm sure there's people that are watching this show thinking, well, why doesn't the county just get into the fire services from Fairview to Bethesda and all the points in between? And the answer to that is cost.
It is. It's cost, and I think we just opened the 14th volunteer station here. Really, it's just coming online this month, and off of Goose Creek at Macklemore, kind of at the north end of Thompson Station and the south end of Franklin, and that's 14 stations over however 500 and something square miles that we have in Williamson County, and those operations, the people for that do cost a lot. But I think one of the other pieces is those volunteer departments are really great anchors in our community for people getting involved with their neighbors and helping their neighbors, and it also is a great way for people to train and either have a hobby or a second career. Or a first career. For me, I started at 18 as a volunteer firefighter in Thompson Station and had no idea at that point that that's what I would find myself doing 18, 20 years down the road, and that would become my career. And those skills that I learned and the things that I was taught as a volunteer firefighter are things I still go back and rely on today as an emergency manager. And Bill Jorgensen, the public safety director, is the same way. He was telling a story just this week about the first time he was introduced to being a volunteer firefighter on the rescue squad, and he leads our public safety department today and relies on that foundation that he built as a volunteer. So whether somebody wants to do it as a hobby, as it's something they do and they want to just spend time giving back to their community, or they want to look at it as a career option, it's a great way to get training and work towards something bigger.
Well, in the way the county does it, and we go back to the price, the county builds the facilities. We put the money in for the apparatuses, the fire truck, water truck, whatever we're talking about, and the equipment that goes with that, the training. Now, what we're asking, and anybody that would certainly like to go to our website and pull it up and look for a job, or talk to you or talk to Steve about coming to work here as a volunteer, then we can kind of route them in the area that they so desire to want to spend their time in. Great opportunity for a young man, a young woman to live in the building.
Absolutely. The county does provide that the facilities and the fleet is kind of how we talk about it, and some of that personal protective equipment for those firefighters, and then those 6 nonprofits that provide our fire service as in a partnership with the county through donations, some from the county, some from the towns and cities, and then some from our community. they go about operating the departments and serving their neighbors, and it's just a great partnership.
Very, very self-rewarding to be in the arena of public safety. And a lot of the men and women find a very satisfying career, such as you did and Steve did. I'm sure there's a similar story here. But many times, just giving back to your community, they can do that. And a lot of our volunteers are paid fire people that work in our cities, but they live out in the unincorporated area in their community. Let's talk a little bit about the future of where and how do you see, as our county continues to grow, it costs money to find land and build buildings and put fire trucks. Fire trucks are very expensive.
Yes, they are.
$500,000 is kind of the starting price and goes on up depending on how far you want that ladder to roll up. But as our community continues to grow in these rural parts of our community, then there's certainly a need for more of these new stations that we, as you made reference to, out on off from the Goose Creek bypass in McLemore. And that unit will service, actually, that will serve as part of Thompson Station. The unincorporated respond to Franklin back in, because you're actually in that triangle donut there of Franklin city limits or unincorporated area with the urban growth boundaries. And for the most part, our cities, Franklin and Brentwood, and Fairview, spend a considerable amount of their time and money. It's a large portion of their budget. For you and Bill, it's a large section of a budget. But as we go forth over the next 10 and 15 years, we've got to develop better ways of delivering these services. Now, some people would say sprinkle every building, which drives the cost up on the cost of a home. Contractors don't particularly care for that. Developers don't particularly care for that. Homeowners don't particularly care for that until they have a fire. But that is one way that you could do, and Nolensville does that. I think every single home built in Nolensville,
I think you're right,
must be sprinkled. Franklin doesn't have those requirements, and I know Brentwood doesn't have those. Andy over at Franklin, fire marshal, he's always pushing sprinkle, 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 because of what it can do to save. We don't have that kind of water pressure, as a general rule, out in the unincorporated area to drive that kind of, and we're not in the water business. That's done by the utility companies, and there's a host of them all over our county. But there are ways that we can be prepared, and I want to kind of circle this conversation. The whole purpose of here is those are things that building codes, time will take care of, but there are many, many things we can do as individuals to be prepared for that fire or that critical mass situation that you have in your house.
Sure. You know, if I were building my house or renovating,
You are.
or I kind of am rebuilding my
You're
house,
remodeling right now,
But-
or your wife is.
That's right. And I could do whatever. I might look at things like putting sprinklers in as a personal decision versus a codes enforced decision. I also might look at a tornado safe room or a tornado shelter in my home. The majority of us don't have that flexibility or the resources to do that, though those are great preparedness items. Short of that, when we look at Fire Prevention Month and those who focus on that hazard of fire would talk about smoke detectors and things like that. I talk about weather radios and having warning, being aware. And then as I'm aware, knowing what's going to happen. The state just did a test as part of Preparedness Month of our wireless emergency alerting and emergency alerting system across the state. And one of the first ones like that was done. And we all have an alert on our cell phones now that's tied to that national alerting system that was actually designed around the nuclear threat back when that was the primary threat in the 50s. And as we see technology now growing, we really have the ability to be warned about potential hazards or emergencies or things that are going on, and able to react to them and move around. And so, knowing what we would do in a different situation, and that could be everything from looking at websites like ready.gov that FEMA produces, to building a kit, to getting more involved in preparing and taking classes with things like the Red Cross or our amateur radio partners, or the volunteer fire service, and moving into those areas.
Steve, I know you've got your hands full a few weeks that you've been with us, and we're looking for a lot of things out of you for the 911 Center. I know it's an opportunity for you to really shine, but your area is oftentimes the first line of defense.
Oh, always, always. And when it comes to preparedness, as Mac was talking about, it's really important for us. 911, again, it's 15% of the calls we handle come from those landlines. Well, 20% of what we do overall is answering 911 calls. There's another 80% of the job of dispatching responders and answering all those other non-emergency lines that can come in that take up the bulk of our time and require all those people that we need to answer the lines. When we have those going on, when you think about preparedness, 911 really needs to be for 911. It's not the number you call because you're just, well, it's convenient, I don't know the other number, so I'll call it.
It's not a directory.
Right. All those the missed dials. If you have an old cell phone that's laying around that you haven't used in a while, a lot of folks may not realize there's a federal requirement that says that device has to be able to call 911 if it has a charge. Even if there's no service on it, you're not paying for it, it has the ability to call 911. So those don't need to wind up in the hands of grandbabies or kids or whatnot as the play phone, because we wind up talking to a lot of small children who don't realize they've called 911 or have that ability. So some of those things of keeping those calls off, that's our priority. If we get swarmed with 20, 30, 40 911 calls at a time, that's what we're going to do. We're answering 911 and any other non-emergency calls that can be phone calls from burglar alarm monitoring companies or fire alarm monitoring companies. They don't call our 911 line, they call some of these other administrative lines. And there's a variety of people that call those 10-digit numbers even still. The last one is call 911, don't call your family first. There's plenty of 911 calls we get that come from my wife, my husband, my family member's been in an accident, and they called me, I'm calling you. Man, we can save a whole lot of time if you call us, and we can actually make those phone calls to your family members from the dispatch center and get you help along the way even quicker.
Well, we've pretty well exhausted our time here. Thank you for, once again, Mac, for your dedication of putting it out on the front line, that be prepared. Steve, thank you for what you're doing over in the 911 Center. I'm very pleased and honored to be able to say that I think we have one of the best public safety departments, and that includes the sheriff, that includes cities and counties, the whole gamut. It's a safer place to live in Williamson County than it was a few years ago, and thank you to what you do. Please relay that to your people. I'm Rogers Anderson. We got to get out of here. Have a good day.